computer. Today, we're talking about being the boss. And while I'd love to say this is for everybody out there, sorry, gents, but this one is going to focus a little bit on she's the boss. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to have Jules Brook with me, the head honcho and founder of Handle Your Own PR. And of late, she is also the host of the She's the Boss show, which is on Ticker TV, getting now 4 million views per month. This sensation has come about whilst it got started pre-COVID. Jules literally has just caused a real movement of women and female founders with She's the Boss in particular, hosting women on this TV show, but also her online Friday chats, and is interviewing women across the country. Today it's good because actually finally we get Jules to sit in the guest seat instead of being in the interviewing seat. So I'm going to let Jules give us a bit of a backstory on, how she ended up with this She's the Boss program, what she's discovering. And more importantly, one of the things that we are going to talk about today is how is it that one can mobilize an opportunity during what is definitely one of the most difficult climates for us socially, mentally, physically, financially, and economically. So Jules, let's hear from you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for asking me. As you say, it's great to have the shoe on the other foot or the boot on the other foot or whatever the expression is. But it's great to be being interviewed instead of having to ask the questions. I like this bit.
So how did this start for you?
Well, it's such a freaky start, I have to tell you, because last September, we were coming up in August to 12 months of Ticker TV. But Ticker TV is the brainchild of a guy called Aaron Young, who spent 15 years working with Sky Business and decided to jump and thought it was very, very very stock market and banky oriented in terms of business TV in Australia. And he wanted to focus on business, technology and innovation, which of course is right into my sweet spot. So I didn't even know the guy, but I was just, going through LinkedIn, saw this post from a guy saying, "Hi, I'm looking for people to interview." And I thought, oh, he's probably doing it in his bedroom, who knows? But I'll go along and do it because I always say yes. I mean, when we're talking about opportunities, I have to say I have a rule that I pretty much go for anything I can go for. So I went to meet him and we had a bit of a chat. He interviewed me the moment I walked in the door. I was so unprepared. I thought we were going to have a cup of coffee. We did a 20-minute interview and then he did another 1-minute interview. And at the end of it, he said, "You're loads of fun. Why don't you come and co-host the lunchtime show with me?" And I was like, oh my God, all my life I've been waiting to be discovered and I'm finally at 53. It's happening. So I said, yes, yes, yes. And then he said, it's for 18 to 45s. And I went, uh-oh, I'm 53. And he said, it's all right, you got pink hair, you can get away with it. So that's kind of how it all started. Oh. Then after we'd done the interviews, I said to him, let's go and have a quick drink. Because I do enjoy my bubbles. And while we were chatting, he said, oh, I need to get more shows on, like I can't do all of them myself. And I said, oh my God, you've got to do a show about women in business because it's just not reflected on television what's happening off TV. So there are networking groups, there are gazillions of Facebook groups, there are all sorts of initiatives out there for women in business, but you just don't ever see a show about it on TV. So I said to him, you've got to do this show, and I absolutely insist that I'm the one who hosts it. You can't give it to anyone else. And he went, that's great, because I haven't got anyone else who wants to do it at the moment. So it was all just really lucky and just all kind of fitted into place. And really I think I did my first show in about October. October to December was a massive learning curve. I mean, I know zero about TV other than how to watch it. So all of a sudden it was like, what's an auto cue? How do I look into the camera? How loudly should I speak? Am I allowed to swear? All those kind of things. And Aaron has been like the most supportive person. I mean, really, he's a brilliant teacher. And so anyway, it all went on. We got a new studio in March. I was super excited about it. I interviewed 2 women on each show about their journey, really. I'm not really so interested in give me 3 tips about what your expertise is, because I think there's loads of that out there. But as a businesswoman myself, I'm interested in people's journeys. I want to know what you thought of when you left school and how the hell you've ended up doing whatever you're doing now and what you've learned along the way and what we can all, learn from as well. So that's really where it all started. And as you say, Ticker started with 300,000 viewers in, I think that was in like February, and now it's 4.3 million and seems to be growing each week I go in. So then on the back of that, and you can, I don't know, I can shut up for a minute while you ask me a question if you like. On the back of that.
Okay, let's pause.
Yeah,
Let's pause for a second because I'm going to
Great.
jump in on a couple of things that you did mention. So, firstly, I love what you said about, well, two things. Firstly, I do want to acknowledge, especially women in this conversation. I'll just put it into the context of She's the Boss. Number
Yep.
one, this was not luck. So, note that the action called, when you see an opportunity and you have a thought, maybe I should do something about that, and then you do not do it, then you don't end up in a situation where you can call it luck. Whereas what we've clearly what you've just demonstrated, and you said, oh, it was luck where it ended up. Well, no. What actually happened was Jules reached out. She saw a post on LinkedIn. She says, oh, bugger it, I'm going to just post and see what happens. And now she's on this show hosting to 4.3 million viewers a month. So that's the first thing I'll say. There ain't any such thing as luck. And even if you do have the experience of luck, I dare say it's actually more that you're a humble human being in the experience of it, but life comes at you when you create the stuff. That's just the first thing I want to say, Jules. So
Thank you.
done, you.
Thank you.
The second thing I want to get to is your journey. Now, you said, and the thing I love about this, Jules, is you and I are the same. You know, I've been running Team Women Australia since 2014. I'm not into the quick tips. Tell us about how bloody fabulous you are. In fact, what I'm mostly interested in is what you've discovered, what you've learned, what were some of the roadblocks? How did you get to where you got? Because life is like an illusion and we only see the tip of the iceberg. I'm more interested to see actually how we get there. So I'm going to put the question back on you, given you like to talk about people's journey. Let's hear from you about yours. So what was it that happened for you after school? What did you get started in? How did you do it?
Wow. Oh my goodness, no one's ever asked me this. This is awesome. Okay,
Great.
I have had a very interesting career, I'd have to say. So I left school. I started working, I was headhunted into the Herald Sun and I worked as their supervisor in their classifieds at about 20, which was absolutely terrifying. I'd been doing a lot of sales and I was like a sales trainer kind of at that stage. But there were a lot of older women and they did not like the idea of a 20-year-old coming in. And so it was highly political and, you know, I learned a lot. But anyway, I kind of also learned that I love working for myself. So on the back of that, I didn't. I went and worked at another newspaper for a few years and then I set up a graphic design business, which I did because I'd been working with a couple of designers as their head of new business and they wanted, the business decided, I can't remember, it was funded by, it was a philanthropist and he withdrew the funding. So the business was going to close. And the two designers who were there said, how about we go and set up a business together? So we set up a graphic design business, which I ran for 3 or 4 years. Really good example in that one, that if you are going to go into partnership with people, you have an exit clause in your contract, which we did, which we had to execute because it wasn't the nicest of endings. Anyway, that was a bit of a learning along the way. Then I went overseas for 5 years and I worked in London and freelanced as an account director for ad agencies and graphic design agencies and all sorts. And I came back here, worked for a couple of big design companies and then decided to go out on my own. And I set up a business called Handle Communications. Great story there. It was supposed to be, I was going to be the account handler and it was going to be a graphic design business. And it took me about 3 months to realize I was never going to get any decent income out of that. You can't keep loading graphic design because it's a very competitive industry. So everyone is competing on price, unfortunately, particularly if you're a smaller graphic design business. So I pivoted in a really weird way. Again, this was another opportunity. I had a friend who had a big PR company and had a really big reputation. And she brought me to a party and I met Mark Mitchell, AKA Con the Fruiterer. And he thought I did PR because I was there with her. And 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from Mark Mitchell going, they're bringing out a best of Con the Fruiterer DVD. And I've told the DVD company, you're the best person in Melbourne to do the PR. And I went, thanks very much, Mark, hung up the phone, went, woohoo, and then went, shit, what am I going to do? I've never done PR in my life. But in the same way that you say, you know, grab those opportunities, I rang all my friends who were in PR and I said, how about we split it? You do the work, I'll bring in the client and manage it, and we'll go Harveys. And they said, no way, I'm too busy, give it a go yourself. And that's really how I learned how to do PR. I then built up an agency.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, it's such a fabulous story. I mean, on a number of fronts. Firstly, it's great because I can really resonate with well, let's just see who I can bring in here and who's got the
Yes,
real expertise, because I'm not the one who's going to deliver this. I'll do this part. You
that's
do
right.
this and I'll just show up.
Say yes to the job and then work out how the hell you're going to do it.
That's right.
So that was very much the beginning of it. And what happened was a friend of mine, Simone Hayden, who's an amazing woman, came in and said to me, I'll help you. I know about PR, I know how to do it, and I know you're really busy, so let me just come and help you. And then bought into the business about a year later. So we grew that to about 7 staff. I have to say we trained up mums, we had a waiter, we had a salesperson. So we took all sorts of people that weren't in PR and taught them how to do it. And then when the GFC hit in 2008, I had a little moment, a little light bulb moment. We work very much in the mumpreneur space, and I'd been Googling mumpreneurs, and up popped this website from the UK. And there was a woman there saying, here's a media contact list for the parenting media. And I still remember turning to Simone and going, oh my God, we should do this. And she said, no way, if we teach people how to do PR and give away all our contacts, that we're never going to have any clients. And I said, I reckon actually that we'll pick up all the people that can't afford PR agencies, and we can teach them how to do it. So that's really where it started back in 2008. Continued with the agency and had it as a little side hustle for a few years. And then in 2015, I decided to jump in with both feet. I was fed up doing PR for other people, and I thought, I know I can teach people. So I split with Simone, who is still running Handle Communications and doing a brilliant job. And she said to me at the time, I think you've chosen completely the wrong business to back. And I said, I'm 100% sure I haven't. So it was quite an interesting moment, and I decided to do what really no entrepreneur should do. I wouldn't recommend this, which is I sold the house and put the money into developing a SaaS platform for PR.
Right.
So it was a big leap, but
Yes, especially back then, Jules. What was this, 2015?
it was, and I've got 3 boys and I'm a single mum, so it was a little bit nerve-wracking.
Oh,
But it was just a case of backing myself. I couldn't find funding. It was just too hard. And I needed some decent money so that I could, develop. Anybody out there that is developing SaaS platforms, they would know it's not a cheap thing to develop, but it's worthwhile. So anyway, so I set up Handle Your Own PR. I've been doing talks and workshops. I've got online coaching again, which I pivoted. I literally on a Sunday afternoon, the last weekend in March, was supposed to be running an event in Sydney, and I'm in Melbourne. And at about 2 o'clock that afternoon, I went, you know what? Everybody's freaking out about COVID. Let's bring it online. And my events, what makes them different is that you spend a lot of time with journalists, and you can sit with the journalists and they'll help you come up with your angles. So I was like, how am I going to do that? But of course, the journalists were delighted. So I went, well, I'll give you 4 hours on a Zoom call with a journalist. And it's worked really well. And it means that there are people in Perth and people in Adelaide that I wasn't able to help because I wasn't running events over there. So it's kind of opened it up for the whole country, which has been great. And then along Trundle's She's the Boss, really. It was kind of like that. And so I brought the accelerator online and I thought, you know what? I reckon there's enough people watching She's the Boss. I'm going to see if we want to do a Zoom lunch. I actually hadn't been using Zoom. I've been using Google Meet and things like that. So it was brand new to me. And I thought, well, we'll just turn it on and see what happens. And about 25 women turned up and said that they loved it. And it was really all people do is introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves. By the time you've gone through 25 women, you're an hour in or an hour and a half in, and then more people pop in and other people leave. And they've been going, they start at 12:30, and I reckon I would be amazed if we finished before 3 any Friday. It's absolutely mad, but lots of fun.
so you've got that Sunday, what was it, that Friday that you were setting up, what was it, you said back in the 80s where you were doing your old, let's
The
switch
Friday
off by lunchtime
lunches.
Fridays, you're back
Yep.
on your old Friday afternoon
That's
routine.
exactly the model. It's like, I'll be there, come along if you can make it. And I said to the women, okay, at the end of the first one, I went, this has been amazing. I'll see you all next month. And they went, no, we can't wait so long. So I said, well, let's give it a go weekly. And we're up to 15 weeks, I think, which just goes to show how long we've all been locked down. But 15 weeks of sort of boozy Friday lunch online with a whole lot of female founders, and it's fantastic.
Fantastic. Well, let's just dump into some of the stories that you've got to share with us so far. So let's just flip there for a second.
Sure.
So how long have you been doing the Ticker TV episodes now?
It started in October. I think it was October or November last year that we started it in a different studio. And the studio where Ticker started, I just need to describe this to people so they understand. Think of a big bathroom, and that was the size of the studio. So we had a tiny table tucked in the corner. We had 2 plasma screens behind us and a little mixing desk. And then in March this year, they moved to an empty warehouse shell in Richmond. And literally Aaron and one of the other guys in there have rolled up their sleeves, painting, making, whatever. And now we've got this massive warehouse studio in Richmond.
Wow. Wow. So a couple of standouts. So since you've been doing the show, I mean, how you interviewing, you said a couple every episode, is that right?
Yes, 2 every episode.
Yeah, which is probably going to be very hard to pinpoint anything. But let's just probably look at the context or the purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. And you're talking about female founders, and what are some of the things that have stood out to you of the reason why this is really important in the work that you're doing?
Firstly, I guess I did it because I'm really passionate about helping women start their own businesses. So because I've worked with lots of startups through PR, there are so many women out there that I think are just lacking in confidence. So partly I want to say to them, we're all in the same boat. Like, don't feel that you're the only one. We're all struggling. We're all trying to do it. And I have a very strong kind of mission, which is all about lifting up the women around us. So now that I'm this age and I've got my own businesses, I want to help those younger women that are either sitting in employment going, this is driving me around the twist, or even better, if they're sitting at home now going, I don't want to go back to work. I don't know what I should be doing. To help them to make the leap, because I don't see that there's any downside to setting up a business, particularly, I mean, look, selling a house is a bit extreme, but for most women, the barrier to entry now, if you can think of a way of doing it online, is pretty much nothing. So why not give it a go? And if it doesn't work, you can go and get a job afterwards, but it might work. And if it does work, then you get so much more flexibility with your family and just having yourself as a boss and letting yourself have days off when you want them off.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing you point out, actually. I think given that it is in this time anyway, you've got maybe the opportunity to sit back and think about those things. Look, I do actually, now that we've talked about that, Jules, there's a thing that I want to talk about with you to get your opinion about.
Sure.
Very obviously getting women in leadership. There's a whole movement about, more advancing women in leadership, etc., starting their own business. One of the things that's very obvious, I think anyway, is when you look at those statistics, we're kind of looking at women who are in, on boards or in ASX 200 companies. And so statistically, we have not shifted the figures there. But I'm interested in this mostly because you are clearly a woman who's expressing leadership and is a leader, right?
Yep.
And yet you wouldn't be counted as one of the women who is in a senior leadership position.
No, I'm not at all.
No.
And I'm one of hundreds, if not thousands of women in the same boat, doing incredible things in their businesses and filling gaps that haven't been filled before and doing innovative things and just not being considered or being overlooked because we're not fully employed and being seen as a CEO of a large organization.
Yes. So I guess the thing that I want to start to bring a voice to with this is that I'm not like, why have we not got, do we need to keep pushing the dial on that kind of gender equality statistic when realistically, certainly I'm not sure that that is even the right environment for women. I think a lot of women are exiting out of that from a cultural perspective. But if it was a system designed for men by men, then do we need to see an increase in statistics in women in that if that's not their preferred environment? I mean,
That's really Well, sort of,
Yes.
that's really, really interesting question because I would say, yes, we do need women in those roles because we need to change the culture of those businesses. And I do understand that it would, I mean, I would hate to be in that position myself where politically I was being dismissed or um, not being seen as being the person that I am. But I think for those that love it or that those that are really into it, if they can persevere, we need 50% of women on boards. In fact,
Yes.
I saw a great meme yesterday where someone said, where it was Ruth Bader, what's her name? The woman who's over in America on the Supreme Court circuit. And she was asked, you know, you're the only woman on the Chief Justice, whatever it is, Supreme Court circuit now. At what stage would you be satisfied that there were enough women on the board? And there are nine Supreme Court circuit judges in America, and she said 9. And they
Mm.
said, that's ridiculous. You wouldn't want an all-women board. And she said, but we have all men boards everywhere and no one ever says
That's
anything about it.
right.
And I
That's
thought,
right.
God, she's amazing. She's about 90 years old, this woman. But
Oh,
I think she is
yeah.
incredible. And so
Yeah.
I do think it is really important to have people in those
Yes.
roles. But I would also, I believe what's been happening with women, and really probably since when I started my agency, and which was the beginning of the mumpreneur rise, which was really, that was just there is no culture that allowed women to be able to be flexible with their kids in lots and lots of businesses back in those days. So I
Mm.
think that was the start of it. But these days, I think, in fact, I think the stat for women starting their businesses is higher than men. I think it's 56, 44%, something like that. But
Right.
I believe that women are just giving up and going, why? I can't beat this. So I'm just going to go and
Mm.
set up my own company.
Mm.
And I would, of course, champion that for women as well. So um, I don't know a lot about women in large organisations other than they are up against it. I know they are, and I would love to support them in any way that I can. And I think
Mm.
it's really important that they do keep pushing forward and try to change the culture. But
Mm.
outside of that, as women running our own businesses with no restrictions and nobody telling us what we can and can't say, we've got an opportunity to really champion all those women who are employed as well as those other
Yes.
women that are thinking about setting up their own business and running their own business. And they're
Yeah. Very
fascinating.
true.
I mean, there are just amazing business women out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, just a highlight. I mean, given that you've been having so many people, so many women show up on your lunches and you've been interviewing, what are some of the highlights that you've seen from the stories that you've heard from women?
Well, I always ask them for their tips towards the end once they've told
Mm.
their story. And the one thing that keeps on coming up, and I have to admit I haven't done it myself, and I should have, is that you really should research before you start a business and find out whether there is a market there and that you aren't actually going to set up something that a whole lot of other people have set up as well. Like
Yeah.
understand the gap in the market. But there's so many. I mean, there's one woman I interviewed last week, Beverly Honig, who is a judge and runs 4 businesses. And because she's also an MBA and a lawyer, I mean, like, I know it blows your mind.
Wow.
Um, she is often, so we were talking about the tokenism of getting women on boards and diversity and whatever. And she said, well, I am that woman because
Mm.
I have legal and business now and all the rest of it. And I'm a lawyer. They all want me on their boards. And I thought, how fantastic is that she gets that opportunity? But she is
Mm.
so highly qualified. I mean, it blows my mind that a woman can really be doing
Yeah.
everything that she's doing. And you shouldn't have to have done all of that to be invited onto
Yeah.
boards. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I mean, really,
Yes.
we all have got an opinion. A lot of us know, especially if you've been out there in business for a while, you know the challenges that women have got out there and you know the challenges in business. So why do you have to be so incredibly qualified to be
Yes.
invited? Having said that, I am on a couple of advisory boards myself, but it's really, I would say, through my contacts that's happened, not because someone's gone out saying, I'd like a woman who's a business owner to be on my board. And
Right.
I think that's really important. Any board that is trying to work with customers that are female, with customers that potentially are running their own business, need to have a self-employed woman on their board.
Yes, yes. So I do want to look back at your journey again, just briefly.
Sure.
You said you mentioned that you started during the time of you running the PR business and then going out on your own. You've got 3 young boys. Well, you've got
Mhm.
3 boys, I should say. I don't know. How old are your boys?
I've got twins, which was extremely challenging back when they were 5, but they're 14 now, which doesn't make them not challenging, just in a different way. And one
No,
who's
it's harder.
18, one who's 18
Don't
has
you
just
think it's
started.
harder? I was like, oh my God, I said to somebody yesterday, I'd do anything to have my kids back in daycare. I was like,
I
at
know
least then
it's
I just had to put them in the daycare and then I could go do what I need to do. It was all right. But
That's
these
right.
days,
Another
oh
women,
my goodness.
when my kids were little, and I'd go, I can't wait till they're grown up and they can do their own thing. And people would say, just you wait, it comes with their own challenges. And I'd go, no, how hard can it be when they can bath themselves and feed themselves? But you're 100% right. There's a million and one other things that crop up at that age. So, yeah, it's not easy. But then they're not huge communicators. For about a year, I figure they go into their bedroom. And then they come out and they're 3 foot taller and with a deep voice, and they start talking to you again.
Yes. So I want to, let's just flashback, okay,
Yep.
to the decision that you made. Because whilst you and I, Jules, we're here talking about some really extraordinary outcomes
Hmm.
from a lot of hard work. There are many women who are at the very beginning, if not actually where you were back at that time. And I
Hmm.
do want to just hone in on that for a moment because
Sure.
um, like you, I'm very passionate about women going through, like really taking the leap, take the step. What's the worst that can happen, right? But when you're there, as you well know, actually making the decision to do that, it's not. It doesn't feel as easy as what it is when you look back and say, "Oh, just do it," right? So
Yeah.
you said you sold your house with having the boys and you invested in a business. That would have really been a big at-risk movement for you. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I can, but I need to preface it with the fact that I'm quite unusual in that I love risk, I love change, I love all that kind of thing. So I'm not confronted by a lot of in the same way that a lot of people are. I get very excited. So I the one thing, and I've probably had 4 businesses now. The one thing I would say is if the business, and this is a little bit of woo woo, but not really. If the business is meant to be, like if you have picked something to do that is needed out there, you'll know very quickly, and everything is kind of easy. I guess that's kind of would be my, like, you'll find the name that you want. You'll find that there'll be a customer who'll say that they love what you do. Um, it just is easy. I used to describe it as sort of like almost like getting on the tram tracks, and it just makes it very smooth. There are other businesses you can set up and it's a struggle from day one. And sometimes with those, it might be worth saying, I'm going to give up. But in terms of jumping in with both feet, I have always done it. I love risk. I love challenge. My partner, my life partner, Dave, said to me, I remember really early on in our relationship, I like to have $10,000 in the bank as a buffet for whatever I do. And I said, are you kidding? Like, I'm happy to have $150. Like, I will get right down to the bare bones if I have to, in order to just keep going, because I have a strong belief that it will all just come, and it always has.
Okay, now right there, I have a strong belief that will always come. Now that's gold. I know it might sound simple, but that really is gold. Because I was asked recently, what do you think is the one thing that would make the difference for women? And honestly, when it came down to it, I really just had to say being able to back yourself and having a really firm belief in something. So you said you've always been that way.
Mm.
Can you give us a time that either as a kid, something that stood out for you, like what was a moment where you recognized that you were just going to go for it? I'm just kind of interested in to see the connection between how that shows up for you now as an adult and over the years where you either had decided to be, because what we do know about beliefs, Jules,
Yeah,
is that at some point in our life story, this is one of the reasons I'm very passionate actually about the storytelling aspect, is not just from people telling their story, but there are no accidents to how we get our strengths. There's no
yeah,
accidents to how our life looks the way that it is, because at some point as an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, certain things happen in our life and then we make a decision to do certain things and then we take action and then it becomes that way. So now that I've kind of given you the preamble, I dare say something, I'm hoping something's percolated. Is there a
yeah. Oh,
story
it
that you
did, and
can
it'll
tell?
freak you out. It'll freak you out because this
Okay,
is so
great. Let's
not
hear it.
Australian. This is a really English thing to do. So I was born in Ireland. My
Right.
father was in the British Army, and we moved around all the time. When I was 8 and my brother was 7, we were sent to boarding school. My parents lived in Germany and boarding school was in England, and I would only see them a couple of times a year. So from the age of 8, I started doing my own washing and, organizing myself, learning to be really independent. And I think that that probably has carried me on because I have a very strong sense of myself as being
Wow.
capable of being able to do things. And I know it
Yes.
freaks out whenever I tell my friends about this. They go, oh my God, imagine. And I look at my boys at 7 and 8 and I think, I can't imagine doing it. But it is really common in the UK and very,
Yeah.
very common in the army. So when you are sent overseas, and my dad was an officer, the British Army paid for the children to go to boarding school in England and get an
Yeah.
English education. I absolutely hated it. I have to say, I loathed it. I was bullied. I was teased. I was way too out there really for an English boarding school where they're trying to churn out a whole heap of tawny English roses who, do what they're told.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot from it, and I learned, traveling by myself. I'll never forget
Wow.
with my teddy bear under my arm, mum saying goodbye, and me getting onto the plane, getting into the departure lounge to be told that the flight, there was fog in England, the flight was going to be 3 hours late and it was going to be diverted to a different airport. And thinking, oh
How
my
old were
God,
you?
will they find me at the other end? But
Oh.
that's just the way it kind of is over there, and it's not unusual. My dad went to boarding school when he was 4. His
Wow.
parents lived in India, so they sent him back to Ireland. And my mum did it at the age of 7 or 8 as well. So
Right.
it's,
Right.
and as much as I
Unusual.
loathed it, I think it teaches
Mm.
you a lot.
Yes. It says a lot about the environment. I saw a post actually on Facebook just a couple of nights ago. Now that that since this Black Lives Matters movement's been going on, there's been a lot more fresh posting of old content. I saw a documentary be posted last night. It was of a gentleman who was interviewed. I think he was in Mississippi about, coming clean about how he was, pretty much raised as a racist.
Yeah.
But he tells his story that he didn't know any different, and I really thought that was brilliant because, I do think it's, we are a product of our environment, and it
Hmm.
doesn't make it right or it doesn't make it wrong. That we really do not know any different. So and it's interesting because then as adults, we're making judgments and assessments about what we think about what certain things look like, but as children going through those and growing up that way, that really is all we know. And
That's right.
there's a saying, right, that when you know better, you do better. And I think that's just a perfect example of that because we as 8-year-olds or 7-year-olds, I mean, even my children don't get a say. They've
No,
got the life that they've got. And if they turn around and said to me, oh, well, I'm not doing well. Actually, now that I'm saying that, I'm going. Actually, they say that to me all the time. They tell me
of
I'm not
course,
doing.
I'm not doing has to be the beginning of almost every teenage sentence.
Oh my God. I just wish I could send them to boarding school. I was like, right, what's the best way to get through teenage years? Yes, let's see if we can put them into boarding
Look,
school.
one of the twins keeps coming up to me going, "Can't you send me to boarding school?" I love the idea of it, and I'm like, apart from the fact that it's 60 grand a year, I don't think you'd like it probably as much, but it is fantastic. And my kids, I'm throwing them out of the nest at 18. Not that I'm not going to be there to support them, but like go and travel, go and do stuff, go and learn how to be an adult and be self-sufficient. Because I think that's probably one of the best things that you can teach your children.
Yeah. Obviously, a lot of independence gets created out of those times. Must
That's
have
right.
been hard for you, though, at that time, I imagine. Like, what was it like feeling like you were just having to? I mean, because you wouldn't have been able to reflect back and go, oh, well, my parents did this. I mean, at 8 years old, if you're going off and you're leaving your parents and you're only seeing them twice a year, that must have been a bit weird.
But look, it was and it wasn't, because at the boarding schools in England, you have kids from all over the world. So I was in a dorm with 14 girls. We had one who was the daughter of a prince from the Christmas Islands. We had the daughter of a Canberran, I remember because Australia was so weird to me then. We had the daughter of an ambassador in Canberra who'd been sent over. We had Dutch girls and Indian girls and so we were all in the same boat. And really, I don't even know how many kids there are in that school now, but if I was to guess that there were maybe 300, I would say at least 150, if not 200 of us were boarders. So everyone was boarding, and all we wanted to be was in year 11 where the girls could start wearing makeup and high heels with their uniforms. But I remember learning to iron, you know, because they were, it was so strict. It was church every
Oh
day.
my
So I've
God.
hardly
I
gone to
can't,
church ever
honestly,
since.
Jules, I can't believe that you're telling this story. I'm so glad we talked about this because seriously, I think you're the last person on the planet that I would have ever imagined had gone to a boarding school like that.
Oh, I'll freak you out even more. When we moved to Australia, my mother sent me to one of those finishing schools. I can't remember what it was, you know, Doon
Oh,
Valley Watkins type
June
thing,
Dally Watkins, yeah.
where I had to learn the art of conversation and how to get out of a sports car in a Mini. Like all those really useful things that I remember mum said, if you do it, I'll let you have. I can't remember what it was, but I had to do it in order to get something else. And she was
Yeah.
still trying, butting her head against a wall to try and get me to be a delicate little feminine flower, which was never really going to happen.
Yeah. Right, this has been fabulous. I want to throw you a few quick ones, just on the area of leadership in particular, because, I'll just frame it because for me, this is, like I said to you, this is about the expression of leadership, which you don't need a position or a title, or it doesn't matter. It's more about how we show up as a human being in the difficult situations of life. So I'm just going to contextualize, like, put it in that kind of context.
Sure.
For you, when I say that, if you were to reflect, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you about one of your greatest accomplishments?
She's the boss. Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I love handle your own PR, but she's the boss has just happened. Like I really haven't had
Yeah,
to do anything. And now I'm about to launch a podcast as well. And it's
yeah.
all really easy. I'm loving it.
Yeah, great. What has been one of the most difficult things that you have overcome or hit, and what was the lesson that you learned in that?
Wow. I'd say one of the most difficult things that has ever happened to me was I had my best friend and I kind of breaking up, and it happened because she got involved in the business and we didn't manage it very well, and she's never spoken to me since, and it actually felt like a bereavement. It was so challenging, and I did the whole am I a good friend, and I was like, I've got loads of friends I've had for 35 years or more, you know, what have I done wrong? You question yourself so much. So it was probably one of the most challenging times, and it happened at the same time that I was selling the house and doing all the rest of it. So that was challenging, but I mean, you know, what have I learned from it? That you maybe, have certain people in your life for a certain amount of time, and you know, and then you move on.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you did also say at the beginning, if you're going into business with someone, make sure you do the thinking
Ah,
around exit strategies. That was obviously a lesson in that. Certainly in business partnerships. I mean, they're things that you don't necessarily think of when you go into something because you do operate from the assumption, oh well, we've been friends for 20 years and
that's
it's all
right.
right. But business is a different thing, folks. And even if it is your best friend or it's your, make sure you treat it like a business. And I think you said that when we first started.
Yeah.
And then to finish, Jules, I'd like you to finish this sentence for me. Um, a,
Yeah.
a
Okay.
leader, it's all right, it's not a hard one. A leader is someone who,
Supports all the people around them and lifts up the ones who are, you know, maybe not as strong as you are.
love it. Thank you for joining me today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And now, just to finish off, I do want to know, we want to know how can people, where do people go to find She's the Boss?
She's the boss. The best place to find it is on the website. So I have actually set up a website for it over the holidays as
Brilliant.
well. It's just She's the Boss, SHESTHE, she's the boss.com.au.
All
And
right, well, listen,
on there you can sign up for the free lunches. The podcast page is going up in the next day or so. And I've got another product called Fig Jam, which
oh yes, I love
you
that
can do
one.
as well. I know I nearly said it out loud, but I probably shouldn't.
If I'm good, just ask me.
Yeah, that's
Very
right.
good. We'll put all the details in the show notes anyway. And I would certainly like to do a shout out to anyone, women, if you're any of this conversation has sparked a bit of a curiosity for you, whether you're considering going into business or you are in business, go check out Jules's She's the Boss. I mean, the Friday lunches are fantastic, and I've been on a couple myself. Do yourself a favor, surround yourself with other women, and honestly, I think the that you can do, given what we've talked about here today, is even when you get in there, I think the key is to make sure you speak up. You know, no one's got it handled. No one's got everything worked out. And if you're thinking about, or you've got ideas about doing things and you're just a little bit uncertain, they're the perfect opportunities and the
They are.
perfect
We call them
times
the
to
brains
say,
trust. Yep, I call them
yeah,
the brains trust. And the other thing, if I can just quickly say, is Ticker
yes,
TV is live on the website. So my show is at 11 o'clock every Thursday. It's live on tickertv.com.au, and there's a free app for your TV and for your phone and your iPad. But they've got great news shows and loads of different shows about business. It's an amazing channel.
fantastic. All right, again, we'll put those details in the show notes as well. Thanks again for
Sure.
joining me, Jules.
No worries.